Well, good evening. My name is Josh Gallegos, and this is my TED Talk on servant leadership. So, when we first started this class, we kind of did a TED Talk. It was kind of get to know each other, but also a kind of what do we know at that period of time about servant leadership, and what we kind of like to learn, and any questions we had, stuff like that. And at the time, I knew what servant leadership was. I didn't know the magnitude of it, but I knew, especially through my faith with Jesus Christ, I knew that He was kind of the prime example of servant leadership. Everything He did was for the better of the people and better for His followers, and even His quote unquote enemies, the people that despised Him. He was always there to lead by serving. Even if people didn't want to follow Him, He always extended the offer and kind of served that way. But I came to realize that there is much deeper meaning of servant leadership, and kind of the servant leadership styles are a lot more difficult than one would think. And so I'll kind of explain a little bit of that today, and kind of what I'm taking away from the class personally. So we'll kind of start with the business side of servant leadership, and some of the examples that I've found throughout my readings and throughout my research. The first one would be, I kind of touched on this, I think, in a paper and maybe a forum, would be the CEO of Zappos. Tony Hesse, or however you pronounce his last name, is a prime example of servant leadership. He really incorporates employee empowerment throughout his workplace, and it shows through and through. And what I mean by that is, his employees are proud to be employed by Zappos. And with that being said, them being proud employees of Zappos, it transpires into their customers. I was reading an example of when customers would be on the phone, customer service would be on the phone with some customers. They would go to the extent of even researching, where the closest pizza place is. Yes, that sounds tacky and everything, but it's stuff like that, the little stuff that make experiences go for the customer really, really positive. And quite honestly, the little things like that make customers keep shopping and keep giving business to those companies. So yeah, Tony is really my idol as a servant leadership, kind of in the business field. Just the way he treats his employees, and then the way his employees treat their customers. Another example that I thought was really interesting, with the coronavirus epidemic going on, Mark Zuckerberg actually just came out publicly and said that the company's 45,000 or so employees will all receive their 6th month bonuses, and he'll also give an additional $1,000, $1,000 bonus to all his employees to kind of help them during this crisis. The company is sending home thousands and thousands of content moderators, and Zuckerberg's promised to continue to pay them their full wages. And I think this is tremendous. This was from an article published this year by Buyers, and Zuckerberg actually quoted. He said, "We recognize that many people are going to need more time away to care for children and their families, and we also know that many of you have additional expenses as part of setting up your home and enable you to work remote and support your family. We're going to grant all these employees an additional $1,000 to use for whatever you see fit, and support yourself and your family during this hard period, and you will continue to receive your full pay." And I think this with a company that big and with that much capital and success, for the CEO or to come out publicly and back his employees and go to their level and see what they need and see what they want in a company and a leader. It just shows the magnitude of servant leadership in Mark Zuckerberg. So those two individuals, Mark Zuckerberg and the CEO of Zappos. They are really my idols when it comes to servant leadership. They're who I would want to work for, and even at the company I'm at now, MetaBank, they've done things, especially during this Corona time, where they are super understanding. They are super supportive. If especially with the employees with children, and the employees that are working remotely with children at home, they're super understanding. Hey, if you have to teach your kid math at 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, go do that. Your work will be here when you get back. Take care of family first. And I think that it's reassuring to me as someone who's just starting out that this is really a company that I would want to work for. And the quote unquote big wigs, they really value servant leadership and employee empowerment, and that's something that I take seriously. So, kind of moving on. Like I said, looking back to when this class first started to now, I think the biggest takeaway for me personally is the characteristics of servant leadership, and that can be found in a journey or servant leadership, a journey into the nature of legitimate power and greatness. That's by Greenleaf, and his 10 characteristics. Bear with me. His 10 characteristics of servant leadership are listening, empathy, healing, awareness, persuasion, conceptualization, foresight, stewardship, the commitment to growth of the people, and building community. And you can break down any one of these, and they all are important puzzle pieces to the overall scheme of servant leadership. Me personally, I think the biggest one that is important to servant leadership is commitment to the growth of people. When leaders are invested in their employees, or when companies pay for their workers furthering education, or when they get sent off to training or classes, stuff like that, that really speaks volume on the company and the company's servant leadership. And I think that the trust in furthering people's education for the better of the company is something that also speaks volumes on servant leadership. Another thing would be, I think, listening and empathy. If leaders are able to do this, regardless if the organization's big or small, if leaders are able to do this and take into consideration how their employees are feeling, how their employees are doing within the workplace, that's huge. That shows that the leaders aren't above the employees underneath them. It shows that they're all on the same playing field, that they're all in this, they all have one main goal, and that the opinions of the employees matter. And then one last thing that I really take away from it is just the overall umbrella that's under servant leadership and everything that kind of goes into it. Anything from how the employees are treated by management, whether it's just listening, whether it's taking into consideration like their opinions, whether it's message boards. I've seen companies that have message boards as far as anything within the company or even personally, or they'll give outreach to counselors or anything like that. And I think servant leadership is something that is difficult to maintain and practice. It's a difficult leadership style, but I think by doing so, it will bring great success to companies. I truly do, and it will keep employee retention, employee retention, and it'll make employees want to work for these companies, especially when it's business to consumer. How the employees feel and how they their opinions about the company, it's huge because that reflects directly to the consumer. I worked in retail before this last job, and if someone was having a bad day or if they had a bad meeting in the morning, and they had kind of bad taste in their mouth regarding the company, you could see it all day, all week transpire to the customer. And you could see their sales drop and the company's sales drop just from, quote unquote, one bad meeting. And so to maintain servant leadership throughout your company on a day-to-day basis is something very difficult to do, in my opinion. But I think it is well worth it if you can maintain that. So that's kind of just a little overview on what I'm taking away from this class, what I view as servant leadership now compared to when this class first started, and basically just a definition to where now I can break down 10 different characteristics plus 10 more ways that servant leadership can benefit, or examples of big corporations like Facebook or Zappos or Google or Apple that they have succeeded with this servant leadership style. So I know I kind of ran a little past 10 minutes, but you can talk a lot about servant leadership, and I think it's definitely a fun topic. It's definitely a fun leadership style, especially if it can be done correctly and done consistently. And this class honestly has taught me a lot, not only as an employee, kind of what I want to look for and kind of what I want to be a follower of, but as a future leader in this world, whether it's a basketball team, whether it's leader of a company, whether it's anything, leader of a family. This class helped me tremendously. So I appreciate all the readings we've had to do, and all the papers we've had to do, all the feedback I've gotten, the forums, stuff like that. It's been a fun class, so I appreciate it very much. Otherwise, you have a wonderful night. Thank you.